So today's podcast is with Josh Hockett. He is a local San Angeloian, has started a group, Angelo All Active, to try and get people moving, promote resources, but you also have had an entire career in exercise and movement. And so I want to just know your history a little bit and what you do day to day and why exercise is important to you. So
Yeah.
could you just introduce yourself and your background with everything?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of go with some of my credentials that brings me into this field and what I do. And then we'll start with what brought me here to Texas and what I've been doing since I got here. But I've got my master's degree in exercise science, my bachelor's in kinesiology. I'm with ACSM as an exercise physiologist. I'm a registered strength conditioning coach. I'm with the ISSN as a certified sports nutritionist, the National Academy of Sports Medicine as a stretching and flexibility coach. So I wear a few different hats, but I got here to Texas to be a strength conditioning coach for the military, the DoD Fire Academy at Goodfellow, the 312 Training Squadron. I got here in October of 2020 from Wisconsin. That's where I'm born and raised, and took that role for 3 years and loved it. I had done military for about 8 years prior to that. I've been in the field for 16 years in a nutshell, working in fitness, basically fitness in some capacity or another. Then I did some research for the Army. Booz Allen Hamilton was the company that I worked for. They were the contract agency that put me at Goodfellow. Did some research for the Army on human performance optimization for warfighter optimization and readiness. That contract ended. I did some work at Shannon Health Club for about a year and a half with the Cooper Tracks program, working with arthritis, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, which we'll get to later. But that really spurred an interest and appreciation for longevity and general health and wellness and just movement beyond military. And then basically looked for what was going to come next. Wasn't sure if I wanted to move or relocate the family. My wife's a nurse practitioner. She does hospice and palliative care. She really liked her role. Her family's here. So I was like, what can I find that would keep us here? Long story short, I found my current role with Vori Health as a telehealth musculoskeletal exercise physiologist. Started that last August. Really enjoying that job, actually more than I thought I would, being remote with it. And then I've also had an adjunct role at Angelo State for about 2 years now, too, in the kinesiology department. So got connections in a few different places, but like you said, the Facebook group is my attempt to have a deeper connection with the community and put resources out there that I believe would be helpful for my neighbors, my community. Anybody can use to become more active, live a lifestyle of movement, and then get the benefits associated with that. And it's open for anybody to join. You don't have to be in San Angelo. It's obviously hosted out of here and the activities happen around here, but the information is applicable to anyone, anywhere. That's kind of the nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we are just trying to get people moving in any way. I've said several times that it's like if you could bottle all the benefits of exercise into a pill, it would be the number one used and abused med.
Unquestionable.
And so just having a resource like that locally where they have tons of options. If I tell somebody, go lift weights, and they don't lift weights, it's like, all right, well, I just did them a disservice on giving them one option. Whether it's playing pickleball or going on a bike ride with your kids or lifting weights, or, you know, if you can make it a competition, friends, family, community in any way, it's always a lot better. And so you just starting to put that together is just super awesome as a resource for people local here.
Yep.
You also do other local stuff like your food tasting or
I'm a food and drink features writer for the Concho Observer, and I've been a food drink writer, reviewer, whatever you want to call it. Not a food critic. Want to make that clear.
Okay.
Just somebody who likes regional food and learning about chefs and cuisine and culture in West Texas. Texas as a whole has that. I'm a CSW certified specialist of wine, so I went down that rabbit hole and nerded out on the wine industry, but that's unique because people see a lot of that side, and that's why I got a bit of a reputation around here as the food guy, and I wear that hat and title proudly.
Nice.
And then they say, well, you're actually an exercise and fitness professional, and then you've got this food thing. And the cool part is that it showcases you can enjoy food and drink and still be a very healthy, active, fit individual. There is a bit of it's twofold as far as biases go. There's the selection bias. I'm selecting the things that I want to show on those platforms and channels. It's not the stuff I eat every single day or drink every day. And then there's an availability bias. What I post and people see is all of those good places I go out and eat and drink and those kinds of foods, which can give the presentation that that's all this guy ever eats and drinks is that kind of stuff. And it does look that way. I've made examples at a few times that, by the way, guys, this is actually what I eat most of the time, meal prep examples of what do I do at home. But there's only so many times you can show rice and chicken and broccoli and a salmon fillet and a potato with salsa, that's not sexy. That doesn't catch that much. They want to see what the business is in the restaurants, the new openings and closings, what are the new wine places in Texas. So that's its own domain and area of influence in content curation that I put out there. And then the fitness side, like again, with the Angelo All Active Alliance, I wanted another social platform, my TikTok platform. That's the fitness and the activity side. And then I've got Instagram, the muscles and morsels. That's where I can put out the food and drink, Concho Observer articles, the food and drink. So yeah, I'm known in a few different realms around San Angelo.
Cool. So how do you just balance that? Like, are you like an 80-20, 90-10 guy? Like just most of the time you're good and that allows you to do this? Or are you using your time where you go out to eat as extra fuel for workouts, or just how do you balance it?
No, you said it right there, the Pareto's principle. It's the 80-20. I just try to keep that balance in there where 80% of the time I'm on point with my macros, my nutrients, eating wholesome, clean foods that give me the fuel to perform, the fuel to recover. I feel good. And then 20% of the time I eat foods that I truly enjoy, that I seek out, that I crave like anybody else. For me, 80%, what I need, 20% what I want is enough balance to keep health and performance, recovery, longevity. We'll get to that in check. Some people, maybe it's got to be 90-10. Some people can get away with what seems 50-50. I have found what works for me in that regard. I don't want to be prisoner to a diet or a lifestyle where it's like, I need to be so healthy and clean all the time. I can never have these things and I need to forgo them all the time. Keeping enough balance lets me thoroughly enjoy that 20%. I don't care that I'm cheating. And I don't like the term cheat because it's planned, it's strategic. It's just a free meal I'm enjoying on date night, on a birthday. I really want that carrot cake, my favorite dessert in the whole world. I don't have to regret it or feel guilty. Where people get into trouble, and this just goes with what balance works, if you're never really, you don't have that 80% or you don't have an anchor most of the time, when you do go and have those cheat meals, free meals, it adds up really quick because you're adding fuel onto the fire that's already not in check right there. So for me, 80-20 works pretty good. And I try to tell people, we're not trying to chase perfection with dieting or nutrition. We're just trying to get the balance that works to sustain what your goals are.
Cool. With all of that, do you periodize your workout regimens, that kind of stuff? I see that being thrown around more in terms of like you're hard for a little bit and then you have deload weeks or weeks where you maybe increase the calories. And one, is that even the right definition of periodization? And two, do you utilize it?
So periodization in its strictest sense, the planned manipulation of training variables, volume, intensity, frequency, time, duration. Yes, I do plan that. As a powerlifter, it's going to look different for me than somebody who's a bodybuilder, CrossFitter, endurance athlete, but it is the manipulation of those variables. I'm not just going ham 90-95% max loads all the time. I'm not going light loads all the time. Just as an example, I use a West Side method. 2 days a week is dynamic effort. So I'm doing speed-based training, rate of force development at sub-max loads. And then I've got max effort days where I am training around 95% in bench, squat, deadlift, that type of thing. If I were to go max loads all the time, my joints would fall apart. I would tank, my recovery wouldn't be there. I can't sustain that type of training. Doing some of the dynamic effort stuff helps me keep strength going up without falling apart. Volume, everybody's got limits on that. How many sets overall in a given week can you do? For runners, how much mileage can you handle at certain paces before the joints start to fall apart and you tank? So yes, I do use periodization. And I think programming long-term, not just day-to-day and week-to-week, is the biggest difference between what an exercise physiologist and a strength conditioning coach does versus maybe what a personal trainer does. There's overlap, absolutely, that there's some roles and knowledge, skills, and ability that they all have, but being able to say, here's a 12-week plan, this is the progression and manipulation of training variables that becomes very strategic to lead to a specific adaptation or outcome. That's probably the biggest differentiator I feel I have as an ex-phys, and then even ex-phys and strength conditioning has its delineations of roles between a personal trainer and, let's say, strength coach and exercise physiologist.
If a person's just starting on a journey to start moving more, is it best to get a personal trainer or a coach or an exercise physiologist, or where does that differentiation happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's information that people can go to start, but like the reason, for example, I use a financial accountant. I've got a finance guy. I know enough to stay out of trouble, but not enough to probably maximize what I'm trying to do. And I'm one of those people that needs to do everything as best as possible. I'm not going to try to just throw stuff at the wall and hope it sticks and this works and other stuff doesn't with something as important as my finances. So I have somebody to help guide me who is an expert or specialist there. Fitness and your wellness, your longevity and well-being shouldn't be treated any different. I don't want to risk damaging my health or losing health benefits, leaving them on the table. People should look at hiring a fitness specialist, a degreed, certified individual that's a personal trainer, an exercise physiologist, or a strength coach. If you're an athlete looking for more athletic goals, a strength coach, personal trainer for general fitness or understanding how to work your way around the gym, get a plan built for you. An exercise physiologist might be a little bit more applicable for somebody with disease management, disease conditions, special conditions that might need a little bit more rigor and sensitivity to limitations and preferences. Work with a professional. They're out there. That's their job, is to help customize things for exactly what you need and your rate of progression. It takes out all the guesswork. You've got to be committed, dedicated. You've got to know what you're after. But their job is to help, like my finance guy builds the portfolio that is ideal for me, my toleration, my volatility, my aggressiveness for making money, short-term, long-term. Your fitness professional that you work should be the same way, crafted around you, not something cookie cutter.
And how is that different from a physical therapist?
Yeah, that's a good question too. As somebody right now who works with physical therapists in my day job, they do a lot more of the diagnostics. In fact, they do almost all of the diagnostics and treatment of a specific musculoskeletal ailment that you're dealing with. They know how to do the different tests for, is it this, not that? How advanced is it? What is the correct treatment for it? Whereas I'm going to look at it from the global perspective of your capacities and abilities. I would look at the whole body for, you need bone mineral density. You need more flexibility. We need more strength. We need to work up your cardiovascular capacity, range of motion in general. They're going to be more specific on the diagnostics and treatment. I'm more global capacities and abilities of the body.
Cool. One of the other things I forgot to touch on was you are starting to somewhat build a mobility and a stretching program to where you'll even offer that as a service. What does that entail? And what do you do with that?
Yeah, so that's brand new. And it's, again, that effort I have to really give back local to the community and be hands-on with people and help them live their best life through movement. Over at the Spin Effect with Shelby, we've talked, you and I have talked, and I said, I've done stretching-based classes before when I did some work with the military and the Navy. It hit big time with officers, with enlisted. It was just a stretching, flexibility, foam rolling, soft tissue class, 45 minutes, 3 days a week. I got such good feedback from all of them, younger, older, middle-aged officer, enlisted alike. I feel great. I haven't had tension relieved like this in years. Like, I needed this so bad. And it's because they finally gave dedicated time to soft tissue work. They started doing stretching, mobility, foam rolling, and some trigger point stuff. Doing that 3 days a week was what was missing. They trained hard, lifted, cardio, all that kind of thing, but the flexibility, extensibility, soft tissue work was neglected. They put a little bit in and it went a long way. And so I was like, I started peppering it in with my clients that I had ever since then. That was years ago. And they've had good results with it. I've even put it now at 41. I have on my regen days, it's a dedicated regen day. The day I take off, I spend 40 minutes doing a little bit of light cardio, band assisted stretching, and some foam rolling trigger point. 45 minutes, it makes me feel like I got a workout, but I title it a regen day because it's not a workout. It's intended to regenerate the body and accelerate recovery. And so I want to give that back to other people. 30 minutes, full body head to toe. It's passive stretching. We're going to do some active isolated stretching. We're going to do some PNF. And we're going to
What does that mean?
Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Big, long word. We just call it PNF.
Cool.
You basically lay there on a mat. We get you relaxed. The first 5 minutes is just any movements you can't do, any joints I need to be careful with. Here's how I'm going to go about doing this just so you're not surprised by anything. And then we go through the routine and it feels pretty darn good. My objective is when you're done, you feel like Gumby. You're made out of putty. Nice. It's the absence of full body tension that's like, this is what I should feel like. And it's for anyone, the athlete that wants to enhance flexibility, recovery, the desk jockey who doesn't move enough and who's tight in the back and the hips. It could be for somebody who's older, who feels they've lost flexibility and range of motion. It could just be like, I'm tight and sore and I don't want to be tight and sore.
Yeah.
So that's the intent behind it. Just getting that started, but yeah, it'll be over at the Spin Effect, and limited hours with it right now. As it picks up and there's more traction, I want to make that bigger and more broad for people.
Cool. Yeah, foam rolling is somewhat new to me, and I'm going to give credit to Brandon Smith from Training from the Ground Up who introduced it to me, but it has been a game changer. I almost can't foam roll prior to a lift session. Like if I rush it and I don't do as much or just forget because I'm trying to get it in, I'm like, oh, it's definitely negative. And he's even worked me up to a higher, more dense foam roll. And I was telling him, I was like, if somebody eats me, I'm going to be super tender. Just because it was like,
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And but it feels good. And and it hurt. It's one of the hurts so good.
It is a hurt so good. And I tell people that too, like there are some individuals that believe it should hurt when you do it. And that could be taking it too far, especially when you're new to it. Like it can leave you can have some DOMs because you've caused some tissue damage. But my foam roller and my Theragun are probably my two most prized pieces of regenerative tools that I have. There's a lot of tech out there, but my foam roller and Theragun, and then the band I use for active isolated stretching since I can't do passive on myself.
Yeah.
Those three have done more for me in the past 5 years for recovery than anything else out there.
And do you foam roll before or after a workout?
I could do both. I typically intentionally before a lower body day, deadlift or squats, will always foam roll low back, hips, adductors, quads, and hams, just because it gets me ready to go and I feel looser. I'm just ready to jump in my first sets. Now, again, on a regen day, I'll do some of that also just because being sore is one thing. Sore and stiff is much worse. I'd rather just be sore and it just makes me feel more limber the next day. So I'll usually do more of a low back. It's more designed for lower body, but there's even soft tissue work you can do with the foam roller for the upper body too.
So like if I'm zoom out and trying to look at everything for myself, so it's like, okay, I want 2 to 3 days of good resistance training. I like to get endurance in there and I try and get a day of interval training. Where does a regen day or stretching fit?
The first thing I would say is I get real practical with people. Where does it fit your schedule?
Okay.
Where can you put it in? If it only fits on this day and this time, that's when you're doing it. So from a practical standpoint, just do it when you can if you're limited on time. Otherwise, I'll do some fact finding. Where is the day that you find yourself most sore, most beat up? Let's throw it when your body might need it the most and it's calling for it. Doing it, period, is better than not at all. Let's get it in there somewhere, but it's got to be a combination of when does it fit and is it practical for you to do it consistently? And then if it's like, well, I could do it any day of the week, you tell me, okay, well, let's look at what's your sorest day. And then we'll really put a regen day in there.
Cool. I want to zoom out on that a little bit. So like what I was mentioning, I try to get a couple days of endurance, a couple days of resistance training. I try and get an interval day in there. How do you build that? Like if you were to prescribe exactly what you would want somebody to do, what are you reaching for in those? And are you adjusting that each one of those based off a person, or are they all needed?
It does come down to the person. And again, I'll look at schedule, resources. Is this at a gym? Is this at home? Are they brand new to it? Are they advanced? What resources do they have to work with? But scheduling is a big part, but what's the end game? What's the main goal? Is it a race? Is it a lift? Is it a CrossFit competition? Is it just for their own well-being? It's a personal goal they have to themselves. And then what of those, let's say you want some intervals, you want some strength, you want flex, what's the biggest priority? Is it the strength number one, endurance as a backdrop, and then flexibility as a tertiary? Gotcha. Well, now I know where the priority is. Okay, then those 3 days a week, we're going to really focus on that. I don't want your resistance training to take a backseat to the endurance if that's a secondary goal. And I don't want you doing so much flexibility work that's getting in the way of your strength, or you're always fatigued because I have you running 5 days a week and then you're fatigued to go do heavy lifting. So I'll find your primary, secondary, and tertiary and then program from there on days per week, rest days, intensity, volume sets, that kind of thing. So it does come down to your goal and outcome inevitably. And then again, time, availability, experience, that kind of thing.
Cool. My current dilemma that I have been trying to do is like, naturally, I like to lift heavy. That's my favorite thing, but I neglected my endurance for a long time. And so I was trying to get that work back in, and then it was hard to do both. But then I have now really liked endurance from like a mental, psychological standpoint.
I get you there.
And
totally get you.
And so I was like, I've been trying to balance increasing my endurance, but then if my strength goes down psychologically, I'm like,
yep,
I hate doing this, but I'm at the point too where I'm like, okay.
That's the other thing, the trade-offs. Like I can blend strength and some muscle size and some cardio and some high intensity with what people want. Let's say they want to roll and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too. I've got a client that was like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we can get some of all, but understand we might have to have a trade-off that you're not going to get maximally strong. You won't get as big as possible. You might not maximize your endurance. We'll improve all of them, but not to the extent if we focused on one or two alone. Gotcha. And as long as they're okay with the trade-offs, we can make it work for them.
I like data. I like the sciences. I like data. I like looking at labs with people and formulating all these numbers and stuff. How deep do you go, like with wearables, trackables, HRV, all this stuff? How deep do you go with a typical client?
I hate it because I always throw out the it depends, and I feel like I do it more than need be, but that's science. So many variables depend on what you're looking for in an outcome. But as far as, let's say, wearables, we could even just go into like labs and what I assess for in how much of an influence that has on determining training. But wearables, to the extent that it informs and enhances training variables and helps me manipulate things, all for it. If it's just collection for collection's sake and becomes noise, it is no longer helpful. And it can even be deleterious to somebody's outcomes because they're just trying to cipher through this mess of numbers and they get confused with one number versus another. They don't know which one to follow versus which one to throw out the window. So if it's helping inform me as their coach, I like wearables. And let's just look at wearable watches, Garmin's, Auras, Fitbits, Apple Watches, those types of things. If it helps drive behavior change in a positive way, all for it. They're more aware and mindful of the fact I don't sleep that well, need to fix it. When I drink, my HRV drops, I need to fix it. I am stressed out every time I get home from work or whenever I have this argument with my wife or something like that. It starts to bring things to awareness that they can then enact behavior change. So then it's positive. But a big one that I do look at is HRV personally, and I look at it with clients that have the capacity to measure daily HRV. They have to understand what it is. It's not the hallmark. It is not a dictator of performance. Should we go or no go, pull back? It informs training. That still takes a coach's expertise and whatever you want to call it, to really understand. Like if mine dropped a little bit, let's say my normal is around an 80 is my HRV, and this is raw number. And another thing with HRV is what is it measuring? We can get into that. People will look at, for example, Garmin, Oura, Fitbit, and Whoop use RMMSD. Root means square of successive differences. That's a different number than what Apple uses. They use SDNN, standard deviation of number to number beats, the variations between beats. So you can't compare an Apple Watch number, raw data, to the other ones because they're different raw data points. But let's just say it's a surrogate for another number. They end up putting 0 through 100 what your HRV is. If I see a trend in somebody's HRV dropping, I'll use mine, I'm mid 80s usually. If it drops to mid 70s, low 70s one day, I don't freak out. I just pushed it. My parasympathetic nervous system took a little bit of a drop because that's what it's measuring is parasympathetic nervous system, at least over the 24 hours or less. So you have to look at the time interval that you're looking at too. But if it dropped, okay, if I still feel good and I'm not overly exhausted and I can't attribute that drop to lack of sleep, didn't eat enough, dehydrated, I was stressed out from something at work, it could have been an acute variable. Then I know it would drop. I know what did it.
Right.
But if it dropped to a 70, stayed there a second day, and a third day, and I can't put a finger on why, I need to pay attention to that HRV and maybe back off the volume, consider deload, add an extra regen day, something like that. So it informs training, but it doesn't dictate it. I'm like, whoa, drop to a 70, can't train today.
Yeah.
You're going to find that every fourth, fifth, sixth day, you have got to suddenly stop training because it dropped. And it shouldn't be looked at that way.
I've only been really following it on myself for a little over a year now. And sometimes it's crazy though. Like I'll be like, man, why is today so off? And then it's like that evening I'll get sick or something. It's like how it can almost predict stuff a little bit.
That's what got me into using HRV in the first place. One, I saw other strength conditioning coaches relying on it more and more. But I found that typically if I had that day where the oomph, the gusto just wasn't there, and I felt like I had to train versus like got to, which is usually my attitude. Mm-hmm. If I went another day or two and kept pushing without fail, I would come down with a flu, a cold, the wheels would fall off the truck, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it'd be nice if there was some kind of a prediction measure I could look at to see when this was happening. Now, the subjective nature of symptoms was there, but it was already too late. So now if I get any of those where the oomph, the gusto, the energy's there, and again, can't put a finger on it, and it's coupled with something like that, I will dial it back, especially now looking at the longevity game versus like, let's just go ham every day all the time now. Yeah. That can be helpful. But I found the same thing. If I push another day or two with those types of symptoms or a low number, you can put yourself in a bad position. So you should be aware of it.
So I drink alcohol, but it's gotten way infrequent. But it is crazy how little alcohol affects sleep and HRV. Like even just a couple drinks worsens it for me. And that's made it to where it's like, all right, well now I'm super purposeful about when I drink. I have to make sure that the next day I know I'm not going to be training hard or anything like that.
Yep.
It's been really good insight just with that.
I just did dry January. So I used that as my own self-study to look at the last week of January where there was no alcohol in my system whatsoever. I'm a wine guy. In that last 7 days, and then the first 7 days, actually waited to wait till February 2nd because I forgot on the 1st, oh, you can have wine again. Yeah. So I would have measured out 2 exact drinks, like to the milliliter for those 6 days, because I do wine tasting education events and I genuinely thoroughly enjoy wine. So each day for 6 days I had wine, and I wanted to see what happened with my HRV, if anything, to see if that amount, 2 drinks, was enough to make a substantial difference or not. And so, well, now that the time has passed, I went back and looked on my Garmin, used some AI, I nerded out like crazy with this thing, like you said, a numbers guy. And I did find that my core temperature dropped by a half degree less, which sounds negligible, but that can make a difference because your body's trying to burn off and get rid of the alcohol. So body temperature doesn't drop like it should before sleep. My body battery, a Garmin measure, charged about 5 points less, worth noting, but not anything crazy. And my HRV was about maybe 6 points lower. So again, nothing stark, but it did go down a little bit. And then anything over 2 drinks, I found this in the past, the next day's lifting, what should feel light, I can still perform the same. What should feel light feels oddly heavy. So my nervous system just doesn't have the output there. The muscles do, but the nervous system just seems to make it feel heavy. And so it's fun to be able to find, that's where, again, using the data can help manipulate, enhance your sensitivity to training and your body's own response to something like alcohol.
Do you have any insight? Like, so I'll use a Morpheus band to do, which is a single 2.5 minute read compared with my Aura ring that does it continuously.
Yep.
They're 2 wildly different numbers.
Yep. That sounds like Fitbit and the Samsung Galaxy Watch versus like an Aura ring. SDNN is 24 hours and you get nothing shorter than that. Gotcha. RMMSD, you can do as little as a 5-minute reading to get your HRV.
Cool. My biggest thing with measuring that actually had a big change for me was sleep. Yes. If you had asked me, it's like, oh, I'll probably average 8 hours a night. And then once I first started, it was like low 6s.
Clock time and real sleep time are very different things. And since we're on the topic of recovery, sleep might be the most important behavioral thing you could do. There's nutrition, there's alcohol, there's recovery modalities. But if you aren't getting good, consistent sleep, everything else is to some extent spinning its wheels.
I've said this to guys, and it's like, sleep is your free performance enhancing drug.
Yeah, you get it daily. Take it.
Yeah, you have it, and that's when your muscles grow. That's when your brain gets washed of any
lymphatic
toxins.
Drainage. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you recover.
Memory consolidation.
Memories. Exactly. You know, it's like, and that's our first thing that we're always slept on. And I feel like almost all my podcasts have a big sleep component because it is so important on every aspect.
And it is legitimately critical that everybody get enough, but it's the first thing to get pushed off the table for recovery. But I also get it. It's the hardest thing to just get some more sleep. It's not that easy. People got kids, they got jobs, they're stressed out. There are habits and things don't drink too close to bed, don't have a big meal, spicy foods, that stuff. But sometimes people just don't have the time to get that much sleep because that thing called life gets in the way. But it doesn't change that it's still critical to get.
Right. I want to pivot a little bit. One of the things that I hear all the time is just VO2 max. Is that just a trend? Is that the trendy thing, or what is it? Do you think it has merit?
No, that's a good one. I'm glad we'll talk about that because we've all heard it in the gym as like the surrogate strength measures, or the golden measures. What's your bench? Right. Or maybe what do you squat? Or in powerlifting, it's actually the deadlift. And that's like the hallmark lift for how strong are you? And that's just been lore for years. Well, in the VO2 and endurance, in the endurance circles, your VO2 measure, that's the same ask. What's your VO2? How good is your endurance? And that is a measure of what is the ultimate capacity of your cardiorespiratory system combined with musculature to take in, deliver, and utilize oxygen. And that's why your endurance athletes, your Nordic skiers and cyclists are notorious for having some of the highest measured ever. That's the beacon for how good your endurance is. How long can you run for and at what pace without getting undue fatigue? So it is a very critical measure for not just athletic performance, but even now for longevity and as a measure of cardiovascular, or what should I say, the robustness of your cardiovascular system, and hence how resilient is that system to dying of anything or developing some type of a disease, respiratory, cardiovascular, in any given year, or dying of anything in any given year. The more robust that systems are, the less likely you are to die in any given year, and the longer the likelihood of just living is, period. And so this changes with age. It drops about 10% per decade without any training after age 30, somewhere right around there. And so it declines pretty rapidly. And I wish more people knew this, because as we get into longevity discussions, the time to develop it is when you're younger, to make that ceiling as high as possible in your 30s when you've got the capacity to peak it. So when you hit that decline where 30, instead of this 10% per year where it just drops rapidly. And then those, as some individuals call it, the marginal decade, that last 10 years of life, we have no independence, we have no real reserve built up, and we can't do much in that last 10 years. It's a struggle versus a thrive. Yeah. If we peak that and then keep it as high as possible and kept it there with some training, that decline looks more like 2 to 3% per decade. You're going to be able to do a lot more things in that marginal decade of life than if it's tanked by 50 to 60%. An example, I know the 40 age range for men and women because I'm 41, my wife is 43. I think I got that right. She's 2 years on me. So I do test my own VO2 because I want to make sure I'm maintaining it. I'm not an endurance athlete, might look like one, but I'm not. But I want to make sure I keep it there. I don't want it to drop with each year and each decade that goes by. I have a 42 milliliters per kilogram per minute. That's relative measurement, mLs per kilogram per minute. For a male, 48 or above is excellent. Puts you in the top 20% of your age range. Other age ranges, there's tables and charts for it. I don't know those by heart. That's why we have tables.
Right. Yeah.
48 and above would put you excellent, top 20%. For women, I believe it is 37 and above in that 40 to 49-year-old age range. That, again, that's where you want to be because you've got for that age range, you have great cardiovascular fitness. Now, there is elite level, but that's the top 5%. The benefits gained from going from the top 20 to top 5 are negligible. They're super small. That's your elite Olympic athletes that are endurance athletes. Bottom 20%, the bottom quartile, that's considered very poor by ACSM standards. You've got very poor, good, good, excellent, and elite. So there's the 5 main levels, then the top 5%. If you're very poor, and for a male 40 to 49, this would look like 36 milliliters per kilogram per minute. For a female, this would look like 28. So you'd have to have gotten tested to know your numbers. But if I had somebody, that's what I'd be looking at. Now, it's not like, and where this comes in, there is a 4 to 5-fold increase risk of dying in any given year if you are in the very poor bottom quartile versus the top quartile. Top 5% is almost negligible because the difference in that top 5 versus 20 is marginal. I want to get somebody not to the excellent level. I want to just get you from very poor to good. And I use myself as an example. I'm at the good level. I'm right what's considered average. I'm 42, which is right smack in the middle of 40 and 44. I want to stay there. I don't need more than that right now for what I do. And I want to be able to stay there. So again, when I grandkids, whatnot, I can go play some pickup football. I can play Frisbee. I could go jog with a granddaughter or something like that and not be winded in 30 seconds. And we'll talk about this, but why something like VO2 is so important. You have to know where it's at now to establish what do I need it to be at now so it's still here when I am 50, 60, 70 years old. If you let it fall to the wayside by the time you're already 40, it will be high. You can get it there, but it'll be harder to increase. And if you've never done anything about it, it's almost too late by the time you're 60, 70. Everything is hard. Everything is fatiguing. So it's a good measure to have at any age to get tested, find out where you're at, and then you can start to train for it or to improve it, not only in the short term, like I don't want to die in the next 12 months, But I do want to be able to do these things when I'm 60, 70 years old. Let's improve that and enhance those efficiencies now versus waiting when it's going to be much harder to do at 50, 60, 70 years old.
Some of the stuff you can somewhat extrapolate. If your VO2 is here, this somewhat correlates with METs, exercise things. And so it's like, and I don't remember the exact numbers, like a big metric that we want in our clinic is, since we talk a lot about sexual health, is like, you need a VO2 max of like 25 to 30 to have sex. And so it's like,
if you put it in the context of what activities does this look like, it becomes real. Because I could say, well, can you do a 7 MET activity? Well, first look, what's a MET, or what does it look like? Put it in the context of, like, you and I know activities that correspond to different MET levels that go all the way up to 20. One is just you and me sitting here. 6 would be like a brisk jog. And as you get higher and higher, those are considered vigorous. But yeah, well, if you want to be able to do these things, you need a VO2 of X, which correlates to being able to mow your own yard, rake the lawn, shovel, do dishes, have sex. Do you want to be able to throw the Frisbee with your grandkids? These things are going to be hard, if not impossible, if we're below that number. Now it gets real because they can see what they are and are not capable of doing. 29 milliliters per kilogram per minute, I don't care if I'm there or not, but when it's put in the context of things they can or can't do, they might be able to do them now, but if there's the risk of losing it in 10 to 15 years, it becomes very real.
Right. Is there any, like, say with like powerlifting, does that, if you had a lower VO2, is there any benefit to like keeping it on the lower end, or is just always as high as you want to be always?
Really good question. And this goes a perfect example of training for longevity or living for longevity versus training for a sport outcome. Right now, powerlifting matters most for me. I want to be a good powerlifter. I probably have a few good years of maybe hitting some PRs yet at 41. The body isn't going to get much more resilient than it is now. It's probably already starting to fall apart a little bit. So I'm being realistic of that, but still powerlifting is my goal now. I don't need anything beyond bottom of the barrel VO2 for powerlifting. Everything is 5 reps and less. At a meet, you lift once maximally for bench, squat, deadlift in 3 attempts. So I could be I wouldn't want to be in the very poor, to be honest, just for health reasons, but I could be in the poor range and be fine. And that would suffice for right now. I could be a great world record powerlifter, but then when I do get to 50 and 60, I'm going to be in trouble because I've never built up my VO2. So the reason I hit 10,000 steps a day right now every day is to keep my VO2 where it's at. The reason I do 20 minutes of zone 4 twice a week is to keep just tapping on that, what I want to say, I'm tapping at the door of adaptation to stay at 42 milliliters per kilogram. That's the only, it has nothing to do with powerlifting. So that 20 minutes in zone 4 is just enough stimulus to keep my adaptations at 42 mils per kilogram. And I'll usually test myself every 8 weeks. I'll do a Bruce treadmill protocol just to make sure I can still hit the same thresholds. And if I find myself dropping down a little bit, then I can increase, at least for me, the frequency of my intervals in zone 4.
Cool. And then is it going to be somewhat genetically set, or can we manipulate our VO2 max? Like, what do you do to try and increase it?
Yep, it is largely genetic. It's probably somewhere around the realm of about 60% genetically determined. And that goes not only your mitochondrial biogenesis capacity and your type 2, type 1 muscle fibers, hemoglobin carrying capacity, that's there, but even your structural build. Shaq was probably never going to be a ultramarathon or endurance runner. Lance Armstrong probably wasn't going to be the best power lifter. So there's structural builds and genetic components there, but it absolutely can be trained. And if we're looking at even 50-50, but let's say it, as research shows, it's about 60% genetic, 40% trainable, why leave the 40% of trainable adaptations on the table? That's still a large range of improvement. Doing the right type of training, there's your zone 2 is your foundation. We talk about a pyramid. You can do a lot to widen your base, which helps get that zone, that your VO2 up, not as fast as doing some high intensity interval work. And I use the example again, the more often you knock at the door of adaptation, let's say your zone 4 or zone 5 maximal training, it's like if somebody comes to the door every day and knocks, you're going to keep opening it to see who's there. Versus if they never come by, you rarely have to open the door. But if they come and just pound on it, your high intensity interval training, your max effort, you're going to come running to the door and open it. So anytime you need to tap into that system, your basically your highest VO2 type capacity, That's what you want, is you need some of that stimulus there at the higher levels. That will get that peak to rise faster in that pyramid. Wide is good, but it's going to take a lot longer for it to come to a peak. Doing as few as 3 20-minute zone 4 sessions or some type of high intensity interval will raise that peak of that pyramid to increase your VO2. So it is trainable, but you have to do it right. And I say that because I've had patients, clients, athletes. I run at my tempo pace 5 days a week. I do zone 2 6 days a week for an hour, but I fatigue as soon as I have to go to max or as soon as I have to do this test. In your training, you're never giving your body the reason to have to tap in or knock at the door of higher VO2. It's never being asked to adapt. There's 2 genetic adaptations that are made in particular only through high intensity interval training. The kind of thing that puts you near maximal, like where you are almost gassed. And there's manipulations of training, but PPAR delta and PGC1 alpha are 2 genetic transcription factors that allow your mitochondria to well, I don't want to say instantly, but they're very powerful forces to say, build more mitochondria and make them good ones. You get that stimulus very strongly from high intensity interval training. You don't get that at all from zone 2 and very little from zone 3. So it's training stimulus to cause the right adaptation. And that's where the right coaching and training program brings about that adaptation.
Do you have people do like the 4x4 or like 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, or like what is your desire, or what do you think is the best way for those intervals?
There's as with strength conditioning, there's 20 ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
Different modalities get you to the same outcome. I'll use the one that's most appropriate for that person. I like the 4x4, 4 minutes of 4 rounds in zone 4.
It sucks.
It sucks. It's just 4 minutes. You're waiting for that 4-minute break and then you go back again. And you're just right at the point where you get in the point where you're huffing and puffing and you just got to stay there for 4 minutes. But that's just enough to knock at the door of adaptation to keep that VO2 climbing.
One of the things I've struggled with, so I was using an assault bike to do mine.
My love-hate piece of equipment. I've got one at home and love-hate the thing.
It is so deceiving. Like I can go, it's so, every time I'm like 60 seconds in, like I'm going to kill it. And then I hit a wall and I've actually had to change to doing treadmill intervals because my wall, it gasses
Muscular
legs and
fatigue.
arms and I can't get my heart rate to the levels I want it to get. And so I've had to go, because running, I mean, it's like almost just go through the motions of running and my heart rate goes way high. So I went back to running for my intervals. I like the murderous assault bike.
Yeah.
Because it gasses me and it's so easy on the joints whenever I'm trying to go faster.
And see, I can get my heart rate up faster with the assault bike without local muscular fatigue. The speed I would have to keep at running ends up beating up my lower body joints. It makes me sore. And when you've got to deadlift and squat each week, that kind of sucks. Whereas I can go ham on the assault bike when I do my zone 4 stuff and not have the detriments to strength training.
Just a sidebar. Whenever you are deadlifting and squatting those heavy days, how long do you give yourself in between? Is that a once a week thing, or because there's such a high neuromuscular?
Yep. And that's where, again, periodization and strategic planning of the right lifts. I will do a squat day and then the next one will be deadlift. And even within that, since the one's a hinge, is a squat, but one will be dynamic effort. So I'm going to be doing like 70% load for 3 fast reps of 10 sets. Whereas the squat is going to be probably 5 to 6 sets, working up to maybe, depends on where I'm at in my cycle, but somewhere around 5 reps or less. Okay. But I'm going heavy as hell, around like 85, 90, 95, maybe even 97% of max. 1 heavy, 1 sub-max, 1 for speed, 1 for load. Cool. And then the next one will be, I'll flip it, heavy deadlift, dynamic effort squat. Because I will wreck my low back if I do try to do both heavies in the same week.
Are you focusing more on percentages of your max or like reps in reserve, or how do you gauge those heavy days?
That's a good one too. With my general strength athletes or physique athletes, we will go reps in reserve because they can use any load they want as long as I give a repetition prescription, 10 reps, 8 reps, 15, 20. At the end of the set, you should have 3 reps in reserve, 3 reps in the tank, 1 left in the tank, none in the tank. With powerlifting, you are targeting a certain load you plan to lift in the meet. You need to know what your opener is, second attempt and third attempt. My top sets, I have a number in mind that I'm always trying to shoot for. But at the same time, I can't take every set to complete failure. Otherwise, all your subsequent sets just go to hell because you're neurologically fried. So it is a combination of both, but because powerlifting is a number about hitting what you want in terms of a number, you're chasing a PR, a total in your bench squat and deadlift. There are number marks I'm after, and I know what 97% of X is or 50% of my bench, and I will track that because I need to see linear progression. But at the same time, I do use some reps in reserve myself, not as much as I do my clients, because unless they're a power lifter where they're targeting us an exact number, we can still, as long as we get close enough to failure, we're going to get the adaptations we need, especially when we're talking about muscle size versus muscle strength.
Well, we're running out of time, and
could go all day.
I was about to say that could have opened an entire another podcast for me. So we'll have to get you back and do more.
Absolutely.
This was awesome.
Couldn't agree more.
We'll have
somebody to nerd out about this stuff with.
Yeah, and I feel like we were just going. It was a quick podcast.
Yeah.
So, but thanks for coming on. It's nice to have you. Where can people follow you with your socials?
Yeah, so there's just look it up on Facebook. There's the Angelo All Active Alliance, or you can look me up. It's just Joshua.Hockett3 is me on Facebook. Muscles and Morsels on TikTok, and then Muscles and Morsels, and that's the letter N, Muscles and Morsels on Instagram. That's primarily where I'm at. And then on a professional standpoint, you can find me on LinkedIn, just Josh Hockett.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming in. It's nice for you to come in and just dump your knowledge on us. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll have you back.
For sure.